being an absolutely outstanding friend, somebody who's taught me a lot, somebody who's always been there with great deal of sensitivity. Every time we were on the negotiating table, both of us found that understanding each other was very, very important in making the negotiations a success. And I must say, you have an absolutely wonderful trade minister, somebody who deserves the highest accolades for his sensitivity, his empathy, and his commitment to make Australia prosper, to make Australia a great country. Thank you very much for your friendship, Dan. The Right Honourable Mr. Andrew Robb has certainly been a role model for many trade ministers, not necessarily only Australian, and somebody who championed free trade, who championed globalization and liberalization, and in that sense gave a lot of food for thought to some of us in countries which were still hesitant in the initial phases. So thank you, Mr. Robb, for all your guidance, for all your support and your leadership in making the Australia-India partnership also flourish and take new wings. I'm seated with the Right Honourable Mr. Smith from Tasmania, who's invited me there. I'm wondering whether I'll get back safe and sound, because truly, your country is so beautiful, is so much endowed with natural beauty, with such a wide variety of offerings, that it can just hold anybody back. You don't feel like going back home after a visit to the wonderful places that you have. But I have a lot of work to do back home, so Tasmania next time. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for your leadership of the business in Australia and for the wonderful program that we have had today at such short notice. I believe you would have probably heard about it maybe on a Monday morning or at best on Sunday. But grateful to all of you for having joined us this afternoon, and grateful to CII and you, Jennifer, for the memorandum of understanding that you have executed today. I hope it's good beginnings for a glorious engagement between the two organizations, and I wish both of you well in the years to come. Friends, I think Dan gave a very good perspective of the macro picture and why the Australia-India or India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement was important, and how it sends a very strong message to businesses in both countries, how it strengthens the bonds of friendship between the people of both countries, but also its geopolitical significance, given the great engagement that Australia and India are having, the friendship between our two prime ministers, Prime Minister Morrison and Prime Minister Modi, who actually led from the front in making this agreement happen. The bonds of brotherhood between the people of the two countries, businesses wanting to expand their outreach across continents. But most importantly, I think the significance of the name gets captured in its Hindi form. ECTA in Hindi is Ekta. And Ekta, for my Australian friends here who do not know Hindi, means unity. And this agreement, friends, stands for the unity between the people of Australia and India, between businesses in Australia and India, and I believe is the harbinger of many, many great things, bigger relationships, bigger work that all of us have to do in the years to come. We were having conversations on the table, trying to assess what the future holds for this engagement, why we are here at such a short notice. I was actually in the UAE, where I'd gone soon after we had signed the India-UAE Free Trade Agreement, another comprehensive economic partnership. And I'd led a very large business delegation to UAE. The idea being that having executed the agreement, how do we operationalize it? How do the gains of this agreement reach the people, reach business persons? How do we get them connected faster? And how do we do it quickly before it becomes one more agreement, loses traction, loses mind space, we get back to other things, the conflict takes over, the pandemic maybe rears its head again, I hope not though. And then we are all back to what we were doing. And I found such fantastic traction in the UAE on the fact that so soon after signing, we received businesses from the UAE. I had a large delegation, they engaged with each other. We actually started seeing businesses concluding transactions. We actually had the Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council open up their office in UAE less than 1 month after signing the agreement, and a large office at that. And I said, what are you going to do with this office here? He said, no, it's a large place. What we are planning to do is that every week or 10 days, another person, another company will come, or a set of companies will come, display what they have to offer here. It's the gold souk where large part of the jewelry trade takes place in UAE. And that way, more and more small and medium businesses in India get an opportunity to explore the UAE market and the growing market at that. UAE also works as a little bit of a transit point for all of Africa, parts of the CIS countries, the Middle East, and all of that. And while I was on that visit there, by the way, either early morning or late night, we were negotiating the Australia enhanced trade partnership. The teams back home in India were engaged. Wherever there was a roadblock, we were on the call. While I was in UAE, you were in US, negotiating for an India-Australia transaction. And I was just sharing with my friend from Cochlear that one of the last asks that were finalized, probably around midnight Australia time, on the 1st of April, few hours before the signing ceremony, and taken into the agreement, was Cochlear Implants. And I know how Dan pushed for it and said that this is an industry Australia is very proud of, and we want this to be a part of the agreement. And I remember calling up my health minister and getting him to agree literally a few hours before the agreement. But I'm picking up on that one issue to try and explain where this agreement comes from and where this agreement can take Australia and India and our businesses. And I'll share it with an example. It may take a couple of minutes. I seek your indulgence. But I'm sharing this example for business friends from the US, from Australia, to truly understand what this agreement holds for all of you. I was the power minister when in fact, that's the time I came to Australia first time as a minister. And I was talking to your universities, and I'd visited the Sydney University, the NSW, around February of 2016. I saw some wonderful research and innovation happening on photovoltaic cells to promote solar energy. And I was looking at the numbers that they were talking of, both in terms of scale of operation that they expected out of that research and the costing. And I said, look, you guys are never going to be able to really recover your innovation costs or use this innovation at scale unless you have a market like India, where you have 1.35 billion persons aspiring for a better quality of life, where we are committed to being a part of this fight against climate change and making the world a better place to live in. And when I went back from Australia, we started bidding out our solar energy contracts, and we scaled it up so rapidly. When I became a minister in 14, we had roughly, I think, about 7 or 8 gigawatt of solar energy. Today we have about 100 gigawatt, less than 7 or 8 years later. Prime Minister Modi, in fact, is one person. I thought Chandrajit was worried about me. You have bigger people to worry about. We had set before us a task to go for renewable energy as at 40% of our installed capacity by 2030. We did it in 2021, 9 years ahead of schedule. And in 2021, having achieved that, the Prime Minister increased our clean energy or renewable energy target from 175 gigawatts to 450 gigawatt by 2030. And then he goes to COP26, and there he increases it from 450 to 500 to meet the targets to become a net zero country by 2070. And 500 gigawatt by 2030 brings scale, and with scale brings down the cost significantly. And that's what this agreement can help Australian businesses do. You can actually take your technologies, take the wonderful innovations that you are generating out of your laboratories, out of your research institutions, your universities, to a large market like India. Use the talent and skills that Indians offer, possibly to make in India for the large Indian population and for the world. Make in India for the world. And I have one living example to demonstrate how we do it. We looked at energy efficiency way back in 2015. I still remember it was probably 5th of January 2015. You will wonder as if I have nothing else to remember but dates. But it's because it's very dear to me. And it's something which helped me get recognition, I think, across the world. Wherever I went, this was one subject that people wanted to discuss in the 2016 to 20 period before COVID hit us. We were all locked down in our countries. And in 5th of January 2015, we launched our LED lighting program. Until that time, India used to sell 600,000 LED bulbs every year. Mind you, 600,000 bulbs a year. And traditionally, our lighting was mostly incandescent bulbs. Right? So every room had maybe a 80 or 100 watt bulb lighting the room very, very inefficiently. As a power minister, I had the Bureau of Energy Efficiency under me, and we used to give out 100 rupees, that's about $1.50, for anybody who bought a LED bulb to promote efficiency. One of the first steps I did as power minister was to stop that subsidy. And you can imagine how politically unwise that decision was. I said there'll be no subsidy, because subsidy was holding back our growth in the clean energy or the light or energy efficiency program. Because of the limited budget, that's all that we could sell. And I embarked on a program that in 3 years, India will become 100% LED. I promise you, nobody believed me when I said that. Chandrajit was a part of that whole journey. And I remember Davos in 2015, by some strange coincidence, just like having Dick from Cochlear sitting next to me was a coincidence I didn't know about. At Davos, at one of the dinners, the Philips CEO was seated next to me. And I was passionately telling him my plans about LED lighting, replacing all of India's lighting. He came back, by the way, 3 years later, and he told me, when I first heard you at Davos, I thought you were some new rookie young minister from India, talking all bullshit and making big plans. Nothing of the sort is going to happen. But every single day that we focus on that program, we learned something new. And within 2 years, ladies and gentlemen, we had started selling 600,000 LED bulbs every single day. This 350-time transition helped us bring down the cost from about $7 or $8 to under $1. 85% reduction in the cost of each LED bulb. And no bad quality, by the way. Philips themselves, Philips, in a contract that we had taken out for 50 million bulbs, quoted 38 Indian rupees, I remember, for a 12-watt bulb, which would be about 60 US cents, or little under a Australian dollar, about 80 cents to the Australian dollar. That was the price reduction that we got. And we told the people of India, the payback of a LED bulb in business was under 3 months, in homes was about 6 or 7 months. It made perfect economic sense. And all that we did was use technology to market that product, mapped every single bulb that got sold. So every time a bulb was sold, it was mapped on a mobile app, which I used to go around the world showing people that, look, because the number would just keep going up and up every second. And today, the entire country uses only LED bulbs. If you want an incandescent bulb, you got to go to an antique store to buy one. We saved 40,000 megawatt hours of energy consumption. The people of India saved about $7 billion of energy bills every year. Businesses, homes. We reduced our carbon footprint by 80 million tons per year. One small program. Cost to the government, zero. Profits for the business persons, huge. Prices to the consumers, down to 15%. Good for the country, I would say 100%. And that's what Australia, India can do together. We have the scale of opportunity. We provide a large market. We can help your businesses make in India for the world at competitive prices, high quality. We allow 100% foreign direct investment into India with no restrictions on any manufacturing. We allow you to keep your technology. There's no technology transfer like some of your other partners force you to do. We encourage you to sell in India. We encourage you to sell to the world. And I was just talking to my friend about the sale of cochlear implants, and he was very excited about what they have been able to do in India. And he said, we've sold 27,000 implants. I hope it's not proprietary knowledge. He said, we've sold 27,000 cochlear implants in India. And I was amazed. 27,000? He was excited. I was dismayed. In fact, I told him that it was somewhat like the luncheon we are having here today. If I was to see in the context of the ECTA, 27,000 in the Indian context is to the extent of the people in the room for lunch. And then he told me we did it over 27 years. I said, boy, this doesn't even meet the entree that we had. The potential is huge. Probably the cost could be a detriment. But if you were to consider, I'm making a pitch, please. If you were to consider making in India, if you were to consider using Indian talent and skills, making it at a much more competitive price, not only would you get a large Indian market, and I suspect we are talking millions here, you would also get a large market in the rest of the world, where A, in the developed world you could compete better, B, in the less developed world or the developing countries, you would be able to serve better. And in every which way, it would be good for humanity. And that is what is the essence, the spirit of this partnership that Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Prime Minister Modi wanted us to achieve. And that is the spirit in which Dan and I sat down to. I thought we were having a conversation. Some people felt it was negotiation. Today, I go back a worried man. I didn't know Dan was playing chess. But I can only tell you that end of the day, there was no checkmate. It was, and no stalemate also. It was one of the finest ways of working with each other. It was like I used to be doing when I was in the business world, when I used to attend such lunches and dinners, sitting as a business person like all of you, like we would do our negotiations on valuations, having been an investment banker, finding solutions, finding the mid-path, finding the landing zone. I think working with Dan was simply like we would do another business deal. Good for both sides, a win-win, which there cannot be a winner one way. It has to be both sides getting a fair, equitable, balanced outcome. And truly, it was a delight to sit down and talk to him, get things sorted out, often working late into the nights. And I can tell you, with the kind of press we've got in India and whatever I've seen and read in Australia, this is one agreement that has been very well received on both sides of the ocean. We have many other engagements, the Quad you referred to, the supply chain resilience initiative, our effort to play a better role in the Indo-Pacific and greater economic partnership. We have many other things to do. But friends, business will be the framework on which all other engagements can prosper. You will have to do a lot of heavyweight lifting, but I have the confidence and the courage of conviction to predict that this agreement is not going to just help us double our bilateral trade in the next 5-6 years as was originally being thought of, but Dan and I have set upon ourselves the task that we have to work together. We're going to be working with you hand in hand, working to help facilitate greater engagement between all of us so that by 2030, as we move towards 500 gigawatt of clean energy, as the world moves towards meeting the Sustainable Development Goals, as India transforms to becoming the third largest economy of the world, as we take prosperity to 1.35 billion Indians, giving them a better quality of life, meeting the hopes and aspirations of all those young boys and girls in the villages, desirous of enjoying the fruits of development. I think our Australia-India trade also should be aspiring for at least $100 billion achievement. And that's what I've come here to invite you all to participate in. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We're just going to do a quick Q&A, conscious that we're sort of up against some time restrictions.
Did I take too long?
Of course not. No, no. And you answered the question I was going to ask you, so I'm now got to kind of regroup. I might start with you, TV, just in terms of your role as the head of the Confederation, but also your role in one of the world's biggest companies in Tata. Tell us just respond to Minister Goyal's question. What do you want to see businesses in India and businesses in Australia doing? And how, I mean, we've signed this memorandum today for our two organisations to work more closely, but what do you really believe business should be doing to seize this moment?
Yeah, thank you. I think CB alluded to it when he said that the governments negotiate the deals, but now the businesses need to take it forward. And I think the industry associations such as us, industry members such as us, need to really run with the baton from now on. What I can see and hear, at least in the last couple of days, is while the bigger companies in both countries probably know each other well, we need to do a lot more to go down sectorally, go down to the smaller companies, increase opportunities for entrepreneurs and industry leaders across different sectors to interact with each other, line up in India for sector-specific interactions for Australian companies who are interested in India, line up at state level engagements because different states have different advantages in India. For instance, if you look at geology, there are some states which are very rich in mining and great potential for mining companies from Australia, whereas some others for textile or somebody else for electronics. So I think we need to get into the next level of detail, have a work plan to see what happens next. In fact, I would say, in the context of M&A language, have a playbook now to say that, okay, now that the trade deal has happened, how do we execute on it and translate this $100 billion aspiration into annual goals, and how do we get there? So I think a lot of work needs to be done by industry, and I think as CI, we're happy to lead that discussion from the India side.
Minister Ten, come back to you. You made this comment at the event you and I were at a couple of weeks ago, but I thought it was a really important question to ask you again. When you talked about that this was our moment, this was the moment of these two nations, I thought people would be interested to hear you talk about why you think it's the moment.
It's the moment because I think the sort of the geopolitical stars are aligned, and we have an incredible friendship between our two leaders, the two prime ministers, and you should never underestimate the importance of the friendship at the highest levels of government to getting a deal like this done. And the fact that both Prime Ministers were able to instruct down through the system that they wanted this deal done was absolutely telling in the end. I described it with that Harry Potter analogy, but Piyush and I are there trying to grab the snitch, but the two PMs can make sure that the system as a whole doesn't work against you to stop you grabbing it, because these deals are not done just by us and our departments. And the Indian chief negotiator is here. It's wonderful to see you. And Francis Lisson was our negotiator. They have to work across government to bring all the various pieces together to reach the agreement. And often there'll be parts of the system which don't really want to be as collaborative as others. And yet when you've got from the very top that message coming down saying, yes, we must do this, it just oils those little pieces so they all eventually come together. And we were also blessed in that the relationship between Prime Minister Morrison and Prime Minister Modi is very strong, and it's built on the relationship that Prime Minister Modi had with former Prime Minister Abbott. And one of the things that I did, because I was very keen to see us make progress on this deal, was appoint former Prime Minister Abbott as my trade envoy. And so in the pandemic, of course, it was very hard for the Prime Minister to travel, because of the 2 weeks quarantine requirement when you got back. But former Prime Minister Abbott was prepared to travel and do the 2 weeks quarantine. And so one of the first things he did was go to India for me, and he met with Prime Minister Modi. And because of the friendship, he was happy to see former Prime Minister Abbott. And that sort of got things kicking along very well. And so the stars aligned. And why are they aligned? Because there's a realisation that dates back from Prime Minister Abbott and Prime Minister Modi, which has come right through the system, of the importance of liberal democracies working together in today's world. And I don't think any of us should underestimate that. It is so telling that we send a message to the globe that liberal democracies can work, can deliver, and can provide for their people. Because there is a message that's been sent out through various forms that autocratic regimes are the only ones that can prosper at this time. And that is wrong. It's a dangerous message, and we have to counter it. And there is a true belief at the top that comes down to us that, that we have to counter it. And that's why I think this deal is so important and so significant, and it's understood at the Indian side as well. And so it was our moment, and we felt the pressure. And you know, I've got to be careful of telling too many stories, but there were at times where it looked like, because the clock was ticking for us in particular on the Australian end, there were times where we were both very concerned that we wouldn't get there, and we had a couple of calls where I've got to say we were both sort of expressing our disappointment that we weren't where we needed to be, and were we going to get there. But in the end, we both were just so committed, and we got there. But the leadership at the very top was absolutely crucial to it.
Mr. Goyal, you've given us a magnificent description of how an agreement then turns into an industry, how it turns into a problem-solving initiative, and those that data you just gave on energy is incredible. But how do we make sure that in getting to your 100 billion, which I think we would all endorse here today, and I think our two organisations should make that our mission of the MOU, actually. How do we make sure that we move from not just to goods and services, but that we actually build capability between the two countries?
Brilliant question. But before that, I just want to supplement one small tidbit for all of you to know why I feel the stars are aligned. You know, we are a very God-fearing nation, and we believe a lot in auspicious dates and stuff like that. We were to actually execute this agreement on the 1st of April, but he was in the US and not getting back in till the evening hours here. So the date was changed to the 2nd of April, when both Prime Ministers witnessed us signing the agreement. And maybe the Indians here will recall, but I'd like to share with you, 2nd of April is a very, very auspicious day in India. It's the New Year back home. We start a lot of auspicious activities on the Hindu New Year called Gudi Padwa. And from the 2nd till the 10th, and right now we are in those days, is 9 days of celebration, 9 very auspicious days, where whatever work you do generally is considered to succeed. So I thought I'll just supplement. The stars truly are aligned. We executed on the 2nd. We are here in the midst of Navratri, as it is called. And I have no doubt we'll do the 100 billion. I do agree that if we have to reach 100 billion, we'll have to drill it down to more specifics. In those specifics also comes in the soft power. For example, we'll have to look at much deeper engagements in our science and technology, in our research, in our education. We'll have to align standards. So we'll have to get our standards bodies to look at working with each other so that products get seamless access in each other's markets. But Dan and I have already discussed that. And we have as an aim, and I hope some of you will help us achieve that we would like to see our Indian standards bodies set up base in Australia so that your products and services can get real-time approval in Australia. And we would like to invite your standards bodies to set up base in India so that our products get real-time approval. That way I can upgrade the quality of products made in India. It'll help me actually go beyond just the Australia-India trade. It'll inculcate that culture of quality back home in India, which is something I'm very focused on right now. And we have already started, for example, with pharma. We've developed a pathway for faster approvals. Otherwise, our pharma industry, and we are called the pharmacy of the world, but for Australia, we barely meet 3-4% of your needs. Right. Because our people would say there's a 24 million population, not a big enough market, and very tough regulatory processes. So we've created a pathway that where our products have approval in Canada or EU, which are very highly regulated markets, and with whom you have agreements already. Those products will get faster pathway for approval. That will encourage more Indian companies to look at providing you medicines, help bring down your medical costs, and your investments will start giving good results. So like that, we would like both countries to focus on standards, quality certifications. We are also now looking at, yesterday only I decided, to set up an Invest India office in Australia. And a few months down the road, we would like to learn from the Austrade example and set up a trade promotion office in Australia so that there can be more seamless flow of information, drill down the possibilities, and I can assure you I've studied every one of the products you are importing in Australia. So you are a large importer of, let's say, textiles, apparels, homemade, home furnishing, ready-made garments. You do have a potential on the pharma side. There are leather goods, a lot of sports goods that I can take from here for India and you can take from India, depending on the quality and volumes and how it can work out. So there's huge potential. To my mind, it's doable. On the services side, education, we are looking at dual degrees. Yep. We're looking at mutual recognition of degrees. We are looking at joint ventures or joint programs where an Australian comes to India for 2 years, gets a flavor and an understanding of India. And these people-to-people connect will help us to expand much faster our trade and exchange of goods and services.
Well, look, I'd love to keep going all afternoon. I think we could keep going all afternoon. And I'm sure the standards issue will be absolute music to Dig's cochlear implant because there's something that Dig and I have been talking about for many, many years. Did you want to say anything about that, Minister, before I wrap it up?
No, I just think it's critically important. And that is the type of initiative which can really change the dial so quickly. And it's going to be so important that we actually get the action that we need on it because it's sort of thinking outside the box, but it is the type of change that means that you can just put on, in fast motion what you're trying to achieve with this agreement.
Well, look, thank you. We're out of time. Can I just say, I think we've all been privileged to be witnessed this afternoon to the value of relationships and the value of friendships, the value of two people who obviously like each other enormously, the value of two nations that have so much in common and get on so well, and the value of business and government working together. And I think reminding everyone that the last time we defeated autocratic and fascist systems was the time that industry and government worked together in the Second World War to defeat, obviously a very, very evil empire. And again, those two democracies and the might of the industrial complex coming together to make our world better, to improve the living standards of everyone. This agreement is more than a piece of paper. It's the beginning of a new era of prosperity between our countries. Can I ask you all to thank our panellists this afternoon?
Thanks, Jennifer.